11 days to go, as you heard me say, before the biggest constitutional change we've ever been asked to make. Well, tempers are starting to flare. Here's the verbal punch-up on the ABC Q&A program last night between Yes leader Noel Pearson and Indigenous man Wesley Aird, a self-proclaimed no voter.
Indigeneity isn't race.
How is it not?
It's peoples who pre-existed colonisation.
You're going to have to explain. I'm sorry, I don't
There
get
are
it.
blonde and blue-eyed Indigenous people in the Arctic Circle.
We're not in the Arctic Circle. Yeah.
They were Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
They were. Yeah.
And it's a recognition of that historical truth.
Okay. So the races we're talking about are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander.
I hope the day comes very quickly when we're over our disadvantage.
So we won't need a voice then?
And why would we not? We've got lots to contribute to the country of
we do that already.
That are positive.
We do that already.
Now, the Prime Minister was at it again today, claiming that voting yes was simply about showing respect to Aboriginal people.
If Australia votes yes, it will show respect for the first Australians, but it will do something else as well. We'll feel better about ourselves as a nation, because when you come to terms with your history, when you reach out and you think about others, you feel better about yourself.
Of course, the flip side to that is that it's disrespectful to vote no. But it's pretty clear that Indigenous people are themselves divided. Warren Mundine, Jacinta Price leading, of course, the no case, meaning that any idea that voting no is somehow disrespectful of Aboriginal people, when it's proud Aboriginal people who are leading the no case, well, that's just absurd. Yet that's what the yes case boils down to. You have to vote yes if you want to call yourself a good person, and if you're not a good person, you're not one if you're voting no. Even though voting yes would entrench racial distinction in our Constitution and defend against Bob Hawke's immortal statement that we are a country with no hierarchy of descent, he said, no privilege of origin. Even though there would be much more unifying ways to recognise Aboriginal people in the Constitution without creating two classes of Australian citizen, as the Voice would do. Even though there's no evidence that the Voice would make any practical difference to the lives of Aboriginal people, given all the existing Indigenous bodies that are in our system of government, all the land councils too, plus the voices of 11 individual Indigenous MPs that we've elected to the National Parliament. If the Prime Minister had really wanted Indigenous constitutional recognition to be a unifying moment, well, he's sure gone about it the wrong way. Without any serious attempt at bipartisanship, without a lengthy debate or a full constitutional convention, as is the precedent, and without taking any notice of reservations from legal experts, including his own Attorney-General. Now, Father Frank Brennan, the Jesuit scholar, didn't miss today telling Ben Forden that the PM's mistakes included no bipartisanship, the failure to release draft voice legislation, the stacking of the referendum working group with a whole lot of yes activists and more. It's a hell of a mess, said Frank Brennan.
These three fundamental errors by government have put us so far behind the eight ball, not only in terms of constitutional recognition, but in terms of bringing the country together. And that's what we wanted to do with this, and I think we're blowing it. The most successful Attorney-General ever with constitutional referendums was the late Bob Ellicott. And he said there were two rules. You've got to be bipartisan. Second, can't have anything of legal ambiguity and legal complexity, because you'll just have High Court judges out there fighting with each other. That's what we've had, months of it, and we're all sick to death of it.
Now, my objection to the Voice from day one is a deep-held belief in complete constitutional equality. The idea that some people, based on race, should have more of a say about how our country works than anyone else, it's wrong in principle. Now, it was wrong in the past when people only got the vote because they owned property. It was wrong when we denied women a say just because they weren't men. And it was wrong when we denied people a vote because of the colour of their skin. Now, to bring that back, to bring back extra rights based on race, That's wrong. That's dead wrong. When we should be very proud as Australians that we have a colourblind constitution that we should fiercely protect. But the Yes case is misleading as well as being fundamentally empty. It's just an advisory committee, says the Prime Minister. Well, wrong. Ask yourself, how many advisory committees are entrenched in the Constitution? None. Here's a picture of a postal ballot that I sent off last week, and nowhere in the proposed constitutional change does the word advisory appear. Make representations, it says. Now, that's a loaded legal term, quite deliberately so. It's not advisory, make no mistake. But the PM goes on, doesn't he? He wants to reassure voters that the Parliament will still be in charge, he says. Well, wrong again. The Constitution trumps legislation, and it puts the High Court in charge, not his Parliament. Just have a look at the official Yes how to vote cards being given to people out on polling booths today. Look at this diagram. It says the Parliament requests advice from the Voice. Requests. Again, wrong, dead wrong. The Voice makes representations. That's what the words in the ballot paper, on the ballot paper say. That's the form of words that the Prime Minister is asking you to vote on. And that's something entirely different. I mean, the whole point of the Voice is to make representations to government, whether governments want to hear from the Voice or not. Yet on their how to vote card, they're trying to pretend the Voice will only speak when it's asked. So why the misinformation from the Yes camp? What are they trying to hide? This highly misleading document also leaves out the fact that the proposed change gives the Voice a constitutionally guaranteed right to make representations both to the Parliament and the executive government. Now that means potentially everyone from ministers to the Reserve Bank, the military, the Governor-General. And none of that gets a mention. Their how to vote card just has this benign little picture of the Parliament. Then there's the fact that some of the Yes campaign material in polling booths is using the same colours as the electoral commissions. Now, this has earned a rebuke from the Electoral Commissioner, but don't expect this to stop the dirty tricks from the Yes campaign because they are desperate. They are desperate because the win means a fundamental shift in how we are governed in this country. And here's why. One of Australia's most respected constitutional academics, Professor Nicholas Aroney, has just released a thoroughly researched paper stating not only, as he has earlier, that the Voice would be a fourth arm of government, but that it could massively extend federal powers by giving Parliament a remit to legislate on any matters on which the Voice makes a representation. The proposed new section states, and I quote, "The Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to matters relating to the Voice." Now, Yes advocates say that this means that the Parliament can control the Voice. Not so. Professor Aroney says that the High Court could well decide that the Voice in effect extends the Parliament and could expand the Parliament's legislative powers by making representations on health, education, perhaps policing, infrastructure and more. Now, these are all areas that are currently not within the Commonwealth's control. As Professor Aroney says, by empowering the Commonwealth Parliament to make laws with respect to matters relating to the Voice, the proposed constitutional alteration would also confer a legislative power of great width. It's arguable, he says, that this would, quote, include the power to make laws implementing the content of Voice recommendations. Now, if this was to happen, it would be another massive change to the way we're currently governed. And plainly, this proposed change has huge ramifications that have hardly even begun to be thought through. Any wonder then that the Yes camp are getting as desperate as they are in order to win.